Recording in progress.
Please pray with me. May the words of my mouth and the meditations of all of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our strength and our Redeemer. Amen. Amen. Please be seated. What should we do when there is nothing left to do? When circumstances leave us frightened, defeated, helpless, and small? How should we live when despair makes all kinds of sense, but hope does not? On this fifth Sunday of Lent, as we draw closer and closer to the mysteries of Holy Week, our gospel invites us, challenges us to contemplate these hard questions. But it does so in a strange and paradoxical way, through a story of love. Bold, brave, astonishing love poured out in an abundance beyond measure. It is a story the early church considered so important that all four Gospels preserve a version of it. The story of a woman who kneels at Jesus' feet, unveils and lets down her hair, breaks open what is priceless, and dares to love her friend and her Lord in the flesh. Hands to feet, hair to skin, soaked fingers to soaked toes. In the version we just heard from John's Gospel, the woman is Mary of Bethany, the sister of Martha and the newly resurrected Lazarus. We are, at this point in the Gospel narrative, about 6 days out from Jesus' crucifixion. 1 day out from Jesus entering Jerusalem for the last time. During the week or two immediately preceding this story, Jesus has been hiding out in a small town near the wilderness, unable to travel or to teach freely any longer. By raising Lazarus, he has essentially signed his death warrant, and he knows it. His enemies are rallying, thirsty for blood. Because a would-be Messiah who feeds the poor and heals the sick is threatening enough. But a would-be Messiah who shouts into a grave and brings a dead man to life, that is intolerable. The gospel writer doesn't tell us why Jesus decides to risk a return to Bethany, a suburb dangerously close to Jerusalem. Maybe he wants to check in on Lazarus and see how he's doing. Maybe the Spirit has instructed him to come out of hiding. Or maybe he's exhausted from fear and vigilance, painfully aware of the violence brewing against him, and aching for some compassion and care. Whatever the reason, he returns to Bethany, his disciples in tow, and as soon as he shows up on Martha's doorstep, she gets to work, doing what she does best. She will, she decides, get that thin, haunted look off of Jesus' face if it is the last thing she does, and she will do it with food. Expert that she is, her home is soon mouth-wateringly fragrant with the scents of roasted lamb, spicy lentil stew, warm, freshly baked bread, and good wine. Everyone gathers at the table and the meal is served. But despite Martha's best efforts, the mood in the house remains troubled and pensive, heavy with sorrow, thick with impending loss. Even the resurrected Lazarus they're supposed to be celebrating picks at his food and sits completely silent, aware, perhaps, that the same people plotting to kill Jesus are also planning to return to Bethany and kill him. The disciples likewise barely eat. They are tense and agitated, smelling threat in the very air. Something ominous is coming for them, and soon. But as far as they can see, there is nothing to be done about it. What should we do when we have no options left? When there is nothing left to do? Cue Mary of Bethany, a woman with a name, a woman with a narrative arc, a woman who, if you'll recall, kneels at Jesus' feet not once, but 3 separate times in the Gospels. First, as a student, hungry to learn anything her Lord will teach her about the ways of God. Second, as the grief-ravaged sister of a dead Lazarus, wholly unafraid to tell her Lord that he has broken her heart. And now, finally, as a companion, consoler, and prophet, a woman brave enough to look impending death in the eye and open-hearted enough to soak that death in healing, fragrant love. There is so much to say and to honor about Mary's actions in this story, but I'd like to highlight 3 things for you that I particularly cherish. 3 things that might show us a way forward when we no longer know what to do. The first is that Mary loves extravagantly. When the moment of peril comes, she holds nothing back in reserve or self-protectiveness. Instead, she goes all in, giving the best she has down to the last drop. The gospel writer tells us that the perfume Mary pours over Jesus' feet is pure nard, worth 300 denarii, or an entire year's wages. Nard, or spikenard, was a luxury item in the 1st century, an oil painstakingly harvested from a flowering plant high in the Himalayas and exported all the way to Palestine. It was an oil used to anoint the sick and the dead. It was believed to have healing properties, to calm anxiety, to help with sleep, to treat pain and inflammation. If a family were lucky enough to own a jar of this costly treasure, they would use it as sparingly as they could, 1 precious drop at a time. But Mary brings her jar of nard to the table, kneels at Jesus' feet, and begins to pour. She pours and pours and pours until Jesus' dusty, calloused feet are soaked and slick, until the oil puddles between his toes, until the entire house fills with the nard's woodsy, mossy perfume, until there's so much scent and oil saturating Jesus' skin that Mary lets down her hair and caresses Jesus' feet with her locks to soak up that rich, extravagant excess. In the face of death, in the face of terror, in the face of utter and seemingly hopeless defeat, Mary releases love into the air, trusting it to soak through all the toxicity threatening her house. She loves with wild, unrestrained abandon. No caution, no calculation, no frugality, just full, deep, achingly vulnerable compassion. It is, of course, this vulnerability that Judas, the naysayer in this story, finds so intolerable. How dare Mary open her heart so wide? How dare she risk such exquisite tenderness, such depth of feeling in a world that will surely crush her? How dare she expose his cynicism, his jealousy, his cowardice with this outrageous version of love? The second thing Mary does is honor the present moment, the reality right in front of her. Not what has gone before, not what might or might not happen later, but simply what she finds immediately before her. When Judas criticizes Mary for wasting so much nard, Jesus replies with a comment that might sound callous to us. You always have the poor with you, but you don't always have me. What is Jesus saying here? Commentators suggest that Jesus' reference here is to Deuteronomy 15:11, whose message about generosity is crystal clear. There will always be poor people in the land. Therefore, I command you to be open-handed. In other words, Jesus is not telling Judas that the poor don't matter. He is reminding Judas that the call to care for the poor is constant. It never ceases. If we are called to love Jesus without calculation when he is with us, then we are called to the same uncalculated generosity when the poor are with us, which is always. So what is it about Mary that merits a blessing? And what is it about Judas that earns a rebuke? Mary responds to the call of love in the moment, in the now. Knowing what Jesus is about to face, knowing that he is in urgent need of solace, knowing that the time is short to express all the affection in her heart, Mary acts. Given a choice between the abstracted need, the poor out there, and the concrete need present at her doorstep, Mary chooses the here and now, responding directly to what God places in front of her. Of course, by doing so, she does end up serving the poor. She serves the one who was denied room at the inn, even to be born. She serves the one who has no place to lay his head during his harrowing years of ministry. She serves the one whose crucified body will soon enough have to be laid in a borrowed tomb. The third thing Mary does is honor Jesus' body, his humanity, his finitude. In Matthew's and Mark's versions of this story, the woman who anoints Jesus pours oil on his head. This is akin to the ritual act of coronation, signifying Jesus' kingship. He is the Messiah, the anointed one. But in John's version, Mary pours her priceless perfume on Jesus' feet, insisting that his humanity matters. In all of its frailty, its weariness, its vulnerability, Mary's act bears witness to the fact that Jesus' body, all of our bodies, made in the image of God, are precious to their Creator. Precious, lovely, and worthy of such tenderness. Mary's worship in this story requires no words, no liturgy, no sermon. She inscribes her worship on human skin. Just as Jesus later breaks bread with his disciples, Mary breaks the jar in her hands, allowing its contents to preach the word. Just as Jesus later washes his disciples' feet to demonstrate what radical love looks like, Mary expresses her love by soaking and cleansing dusty feet. Just as Jesus later offers up his broken body for the healing of the world, Mary offers her body, her hair, her hands, her tears, to cover Jesus in love. And Jesus, in turn, receives Mary's gift into his own body with gratitude and pleasure. Silencing her critics, he allows Mary's gesture to become a holy sacrament of skin, hair, dust, perfume. What does this mean for us, I wonder, as we live in a culture that mistreats bodies in so many ways? Shaming them, taming them, wounding them, ignoring them, redlining them, incarcerating them, denying them sustenance, health care, housing, dignity. What would it be like to recognize, as Mary does, that our bodies, all bodies, are meant to be honored as vehicles for love, worship, hospitality, and grace? Mary's gesture here reminds us that any version of religion that keeps us in our heads, unable to love ourselves and each other in the flesh, is not worthy of the God of the Incarnation, the God who became flesh for us. Mary's perfume, in its very fleetingness, serves as a protest against every violation of bodies. As she bathes Jesus' feet, she declares that the stench of violence, oppression, destruction, and death will not have the last word in our lives. The last word will always belong to the sweet, the fragrant, the beautiful, the whole, the living. When I reflect on this story in light of Holy Week, I like to imagine that the scent of Mary's perfume stays with Jesus throughout all the suffering he endures. As he is betrayed, as he is arrested, as he is imprisoned, beaten, and crucified, I imagine that Mary's healing, love-soaked perfume wafts up from his bruised feet, giving him courage and reminding him that he is loved. Likewise, I imagine that Mary doesn't wash her hair for days after she breaks open that priceless jar. I imagine that she holds those scented tendrils to her face and breathes them in, even as the shock and sorrow of Jesus' suffering rips through her. I imagine that love poured out in extravagance, offered in the needful moment and inscribed on frail, sacred skin, binds Mary and Jesus together during Holy Week, carrying them through suffering, through death, through despair, all the way to resurrection. So much is given to us in this story. What will we do with it as we set our faces towards Jerusalem? Will we choose the measured risk or the lavish gesture? Will we dare extravagance, or will we hold our hearts back in cynicism or fear? Will we practice a faith that resides safely in our heads, or will we honor this holy dust that God has breathed into being and called very, very good? And that costly jar, the one we're hanging on to at all costs, whatever that jar contains for each one of us, whatever we are tempted to hoard or to hide, when and for whom will we dare to break it open and pour it out? The time is short. Death is coming. For this moment, though, we have Jesus, here, now, within us, among us. What will we do for him while he is still here? Amen.